Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, Israelis are flocking to the coastline in droves, and not for fun in the sun, but rather to help clean up one of the worst environmental disasters to hit the Mediterranean in decades. Meanwhile, the latest COVID-related deaths becoming a symbol for Israel's vaccination campaign. This as government and health authorities likewise promote the green passports and green certificates plan. On Sunday, Israel and Egypt striking a historic deal to build a natural gas pipeline directly from Israel to Egypt. The pipeline will be built from Israel's offshore eastern Mediterranean Leviathan field all the way to a liquefaction plant in Egypt. And the plan aiming to boost gas exports to Europe in light of Europe's growing demand.
We think there's a new era of peace and prosperity for the region with the Abraham Accords. This began, of course, with the historic peace treaty between Egypt and Israel, but now it is becoming something that can better the lives of all the people in economic terms. And we think that this is a great opportunity for regional cooperation. Egypt, Israel, and the other countries, we are an energy hub. We can supply not only our own needs, but the needs of many other countries.
The Leviathan field, discovered in 2010, is estimated to hold 533 billion cubic meters of natural gas, along with 34.1 million barrels of condensate. And Israel began pumping gas from Leviathan to Egypt back in December 2019. Now, on top of the new natural gas agreements just announced between Israel and Egypt, Mediterranean nations are also looking into ways of keeping the coastlines clean following one of the worst ecological disasters to hit the region in decades. Concerned over public health, Israelis ordered to keep away from nearly all Israeli Mediterranean coastlines until further notice. But thousands arriving anyways to help in the cleanup of one of the worst oil spills in the area's modern history. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praising the efforts in a recent visit to Ashdod.
מה שמאוד התרשמתי זה ההתנדבות של אזרחים שבאו לנקות את החופים. זה החיילים שלנו. ממש דוגמה, מופת. אנחנו חייבים לשמור על החופים שלנו ועל המדינה שלנו ועל הגנת הסביבה, וגילה תביא מחר לממשלה, תביא תוכנית עם תקציב כדי קודם כל לנקות את החופים.
Alongside turtles, fish, and other wildlife, the spills making headlines last week with the death of a 17-meter or 55-foot-long fin whale, and international authorities banding together in tracking down the likely culprit to one of just 9 ships traveling through a dangerous winter storm February 11. Israeli Environmental Protection Minister Ghila Gamliel, meanwhile, saying that the chances of finding the ship responsible is high, as is the chance to successfully sue the ship's insurance company for funding to help in the cleanup. Officials expecting the damages to cost upwards of tens of millions of shekels. Looking towards the future, though, both Gamliel and Prime Minister Netanyahu calling for safer fueling in the sea going forwards, including in new discussions with their Egyptian counterparts.
דיברתי עכשיו עם שר האנרגיה המצרי שבא אלינו והצענו שכל האוניות האלה שאתם רואים שם יופעלו על גז טבעי במקום הדלק שמזהם כפי שקורה כאן. ואני חושב שאם יהיה איגוד של כמה מדינות, אנחנו יכולים להביא את זה תוך כמה שנים, שינוי עצום. ומגן על הים נקי, שיהיה ים נקי, מדינה נקייה, חופים נקיים.
Joining me now with more on the Mediterranean oil spill is applied and environmental microbiologist from Ben-Gurion University, Dr. Ido Bar-Zeev. Dr. Bar-Zeev, thank you so much for being with us. Now, what is the extent of the damages to aquatic life in the Mediterranean?
Well, it ranges in spectrum. It starts with these big pictures of large oceanic whales, and it goes down to the microbes, to the little bacteria that are driving this ecosystem. So I would say it's really wide. You can definitely see it, and that I assume the immediate effect that is visualized as everybody can see it on TV. But actually what you would have is also transparent effects, chronic effects that might be submerged with this tar that is embedded in the sediment.
And when you say, chronic effects that will be embedded into the sediments, how long term are we talking? Can you put this in real terms, in layman's terms, what that effect might look like?
So the immediate effect is what we see now, and these might terminate in hopefully a few days. However, there are some effects that can last for weeks to months when things that are discharged from the star is flowing backwards into the ocean from the sediment. Again, this can impact to some extent the aquatic ecology. The real extent is not really clear, and this is something that must be investigated now and relate to the funds that should be pushed into this thing.
Now, in addition to the microbiological tragedy that has occurred, so far we've been told that the effects on desalination plants on Israel's coastlines has been minimal, or even they're saying that there hasn't been an effect on the desalination plants. Do you suspect that luck, you could call it, will continue, or will there be an effect that we should be careful for?
So let's distinguish between two things. One is water security or water safety, because what we Israeli drink is mostly desalinated water. This is super important. I can assure you in 100% that the water security will remain, meaning the water is after desalination is safe because the membrane will reject all of these contaminants. The issue sometimes is on the operational aspect of this process that may suffer an impact, although we public will not be affected of it. At this point, the magnitude of the oil spill that Israel suffered, which again to the aquatic life is horrible, to the desalination facilities, to the best of my knowledge, they are passing through it in fairly good success due to the engineering capabilities of our desal facilities. However, and this calls for a lot of funds and research, what will happen in the next oil spill that might be more catastrophic. Again, we are depending on seawater desalination for our water sector.
All right, Dr. Ido Bar-Zev, thank you so much for being with us today.
For sure. Enjoy.
Another tragedy now gripping Israel. Doctors in Jerusalem announcing the coronavirus-related deaths of both a pregnant woman and her fetus. Hannah Rifkin with the story.
32-year-old pregnant mother of 4, Osnat Ben-Shitrit, laid to rest in Israel Monday after dying of coronavirus-related complications in Jerusalem's Hadassah hospital. And to make matters worse, Ben-Shitrit's unborn 5th child also passing away. The fetus was not infected with the virus and was delivered in critical condition via C-section, but did not survive. And this as Osnat was not vaccinated because she was reportedly wary of vaccination concerns during pregnancy. Osnat's family, meanwhile, eulogizing her as a woman of valor and using her memory then to inspire others to protect themselves from the virus. Leading health officials likewise using this tragedy as the latest wake-up call for other unvaccinated individuals, especially other pregnant women beyond the first trimester. Hospital staff saying the recent UK and South African variants in particular seem to be more dangerous to women in gestation. And this after the first fetus to die from COVID in Israel was reported last week in Ashdod, having caught the virus through the placenta from the mother.
Meanwhile, despite certain snags in the program, Israel's COVID vaccine campaign is still going strong, with Health Minister Yuli Edelstein now announcing nearly 3 million citizens having gotten both doses of the drug. At least 4.37 million Israelis have now received at least one of 2 doses of the coronavirus vaccine. and 3 million citizens have now gotten both. Or at least, so says Health Minister Yuli Edelstein as he praises the country's efforts on Twitter, saying the week has opened with some encouraging data, including 157,000 people who were vaccinated just yesterday, nearly half of whom were people getting the first of 2 shots. The good news then also extending into the general infection rate, with a 50% drop in recorded infections among young people, and researchers adding that we have cause to be optimistic, even as many citizens are still opposed to receiving the jab at all. But while health is a major factor, the green passports or certificates seem to be chief among the reasons for getting the shot. The government, for its part, campaigning hard on all the benefits that vaccinated citizens will enjoy, including access to leisure and cultural facilities, and in the future, mass events and travel.
אני נמצא כאן באילת כדי לבחון מקרוב את השימוש בדרכון הירוק. המלון עומד להיפתח לחדרים ביום שלישי. אני מקווה שאילת כולה תיפתח כאי ירוק בימים הקרובים. אבל אם אתם באים עם הדרכון הזה, אתם יכולים להיות כאן בבתי המלון, אתם יכולים ללכת כמובן גם לחדרי כושר ולשאר הדברים שניתן לכם. אני מבקש מכם, צעירים, מבוגרים, לכו להתחסן, קחו את הדרכון הירוק שלכם, תלכו לבתי המלון, תלכו בהמשך למסעדות ולטיסות, תחזרו לחיים, תשמרו על החיים.
So how's it work? Well, as of Sunday, all Israelis who have been fully vaccinated or who have recovered from the disease will be eligible for the Green Pass. And to get it, you just need to access the permit via the Health Ministry's Ramzor app or print off the permit from the Health Ministry's dedicated COVID website. Now, on paper, there are few problems with the Green Passports program. It's designed to encourage Israelis to go and get vaccinated against coronavirus by giving vaccinated individuals access to certain amenities that the unvaccinated cannot enjoy without a recent negative COVID test. But critics are alleging that the practice is discriminatory and will likely lead to lawsuits. Here to discuss is Maya Fried, international spokesperson at the Association for Civil Rights in Israel. Maya, thank you so much for being with us. Now, do you believe that the Green Passport program is discriminatory?
So we actually don't see this issue as so black and white. It's not that it's going to be discriminatory starting yesterday when it began. We see the sense with the government wanting to roll out the program and reopen the market very slowly. And it makes sense to have positive encouragement and try to get more and more people vaccinated. We see the room for the government to do this. The question is it proportional? And is it going to be temporary? And if there are any other alternatives that will come up down the line. So we are following the situation. At the moment, we understand that this is the way to reopen the economy. And the question moving forward, as the infections hopefully drop, will be how does it affect the Green Passport system?
Again, though, this kind of falls on my next question. How is this any different really than any other vaccine that is routinely required or strongly suggested by Israel? For example, the measles, mumps, and rubella MMR vaccine, the Tdap vaccine, hepatitis A and B, and the list goes on. Some of these required just to enter Israel. Many of them are strongly suggested specifically for at-risk groups. How is this any different?
So that's an interesting question. We're experiencing an emergency situation unlike any other in our generation. And we understand the need for this positive reinforcement. And like I said, the question is when we get to herd immunity or when we get to a certain infection rate, how this will change the situation. And also the question is about the populations who are not able to get vaccinated. People 16 years and under, people with other underlying medical conditions. What are the solutions for those people? We don't have the answers, not as this situation is unfolding. And as you know, here in Israel, on a day-to-day basis, the policy is changing, the infection rate is changing. So we're following the situation. In the meantime, we are getting tangible complaints about employee issues where vulnerable employees have been asked by their employers about their vaccination status. And we appeal to the Attorney General about this issue because it can't be that people are getting fired based on whether or not they're choosing to be vaccinated.
So on the one hand, I completely understand your argument saying, there are a lot of people who cannot get the vaccine. And that really is an argument for why all the people who can get the vaccine should get the vaccine, is to protect those people who are at risk and cannot get the vaccine themselves. But now you're also speaking now of potential discrimination suits in the workplace where employers are saying you can't come and work unless you have a certain vaccine. But where do you draw the line? At what point does the right to protect or decide what goes into your body get overridden by the right for a company to ensure a safe workplace or to set standards for employment?
It's a great question, and it comes down to the notion of what are basic human rights in the first place. And the answer is vague because there is no absolute right. In different situations, the government has room to infringe on certain rights, and that's where proportionality comes in, right? If you commit a crime, then it's okay for you to be incarcerated. Nobody really argues with that. And so your freedom of movement and freedom at all is taken away because you did something to warrant that. So we don't really question that. In an emergency situation, the question is what types of rights should be infringed on? What's the proportional measure to take? And we have to continuously reassess that situation. So if in 6 months, the infection rate is half of what it is now, but the green passport system is exactly the same, there will be civil rights issues. In terms of employment, if they want to infringe on employment, it can't be that every employer chooses on his own basis how to do that. There needs to be a democratic process, there needs to be legislation, and it needs to be a policy across the board.
All right, Maya Fried, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on, weekly comedy show Saturday Night Live now under fire for anti-Semitic language after Michael Shea, co-host of the show's news parody Weekend Update, fired off a joke aimed at Israel's COVID vaccine campaign.
Israel is reporting that they vaccinated half of their population. And I'm going to guess it's the Jewish half.
The short clip going viral on Twitter with over 2 million views as of this reading. And the comment sections are, of course, equally abuzz, with some defending the joke, tweeting that it's not anti-Semitic and that Israel, anyway, is an apartheid state. But many others are rightfully pointing out that the statement is at best disingenuous and at worst dangerous, especially as Israel is by no means an apartheid state, nor is it campaigning for vaccinations along religious lines. In fact, extra efforts have been made to specifically target the Israeli Arab and Israeli ultra-Orthodox communities for vaccinations, precisely because they are lagging behind the general population. Meanwhile, at least 2/3 of Israeli Arabs and Palestinians in East Jerusalem in at-risk age groups have also already been inoculated. Pro-Israel advocacy groups then are now launching petitions on Twitter calling on SNL to apologize for stoking anti-Semitic sentiments. Now, another unusual story over the weekend, but when it comes to Israeli politics, nothing is unexpected. With elections just over a month away, parties are going all out with their campaigns, some more provocatively than others. Extreme right political candidate of the Otzma Yehudit party, Itamar Ben-Gvir, posting to his personal Twitter account a satirical video featuring a fictitious WhatsApp group chat, including all of Ben-Gvir's left-wing political rivals, who he calls Yair Lapid's dream government. But in the controversial video, Arab-Israeli Knesset member and candidate for Labor, Ibtissam Mar'ana, is made to joke about the Holocaust, sending a meme of Hitler with a heart emoji. Now, Ben-Gvir has been petitioning against her run in the Knesset for comments that she has made in the past on Twitter, but this is sparking renewed heavy criticisms against both Ben-Gvir and his party, Otzma Yehudit, even from Ben-Gvir's new political partners, who say that the feud has gone too far. Ben-Gvir, however, defending his statements.
אפילו בצלאל סמוטריץ', השותף שלך לבלוק הטכני או לא לבלוק הטכני, גינה את זה, אמר אני דור שלישי לשואה, זה לא היה במקום, לא ראיתי את זה לפני שזה פורסם.
קודם כל, בצלאל צודק, הוא לא היה אחראי לזה, זה אחריות של עוצמה יהודית של הצוות האסטרטגי, זה לא יעזור לי גם אם אני אגיד לך שראיתי את זה והתלבטתי, השיקול דעת הוא שלי, האחריות שלי, טעיתי בזה שהכנסנו שם מוטיבים שלא היינו צריכים להכניס. אבל בואי נדבר על המהות. המהות זה שיאיר לפיד ואפילו נפתלי בנט הולכים לשבת בממשלה, רוצים, זה החלום, עם הגברת הזאת, עם מרץ, עם הדוברת של בל"ד, את מבינה איזה סכנה הולכת להיות כאן? אז אנחנו, אני ובצלאל, שלפעמים יש בינינו מחלוקת, הולכים להציל את זה.
Joining us with more is Jeremy Salton, candidate for Knesset with the Yamina party under chairperson Naftali Bennett. Jeremy, thanks so much for being with us. It's a pleasure. Now, first of all, how do you respond to the video and the allegations levied against your party and others in the opposition right now by Itamar Ben-Gvir and Otzma Yehudit?
Unfortunately, I was not at all surprised. We know already what to expect from Ben-Gvir. I did expect a bit more from Smotrich. I understand that he says that he was not aware of what was happening in terms of what was going out in his name. However, Smotrich has not taken it down yet. That's nice that he's saying that he disagrees with Ben-Gvir, but even as we're having this interview right now, it's still there in all of the different groups and online and on their various social media pages. So, this would be a great time for them to take that down. But it's a crazy thing saying that our dream government is to sit with the far left and to sit with members of the joint list. I think that anybody who knows what Yamina stands for and who Naftali Bennett is realizes what a ridiculous message that is, despite the fact, of course, that we have to, go through a lot of ridiculous, really just harsh and things that should not be within the discourse that were part of that video.
All right, now Ben-Gvir he went on to call parties like Yamina anti-Zionist, or at the very least less Zionist than Ben-Gvir's Otzma Yehudit. How do you respond?
It's Yamina that recognizes Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. I would ask him how he defines Zionism and how he defines Israel. Once again, he's the one who's really going ahead and he's invoking the Holocaust and Hitler and things that should just not be in the Israeli discourse. And I'm really not sure what part of Zionism he thinks that he's part of, that he's trying to go ahead and take various patriots, whether it's in my party or other parties, and try to go ahead and stick any of that ridiculous rhetoric to us. So really, I think he should be ashamed of himself. I think Smotrich should stop allowing his partners to take him in all these crazy directions, and they should just take down the video, take down the ad. To say that you don't like about the ad, but then try to defend the messaging behind the ad, and you're refusing to actually take it down, that says all you have to know about what's happening in that party right now. And apparently it's a very terrible message.
All right, now I want to address the supposed alleged meeting between the Likud and Fatah in Ramallah overnight, apparently in fear of a right-wing coalition controlled by Gideon Sa'ar's New Hope Party and your Yamina party under Naftali Bennett. Are they right to be afraid and throw support behind the Likud?
I must say that the Israeli election is always going to throw you more surprises. The reports that there's some sort of deal that was discussed between Likud and the Palestinian Authority. I guess you're right. What seems to be scaring certain people, I'm not sure if it's the Palestinian side or Likud side or perhaps both. Perhaps, again, they see what we see, and that is that Yamina is gaining in strength, and that as we get closer to Election Day, it's quite clear that Netanyahu does not have a government.
Well, it would appear that this meeting is essentially to say that the Likud government would be more sympathetic than a Yamina New Hope government. Is that accurate?
I'm not talking about who's going to be more sympathetic to the Palestinian Authority, but the idea that the Likud is considering whatever deal that might have been reported here in terms of getting an endorsement. Remember, it's the Netanyahu-Likud campaign ads that are saying that only Netanyahu will have a full right government. Only Netanyahu will have a right-wing bloc. I don't know, man. If you're the one sitting with the Palestinian Authority having a lot of these deals, again, according to these reports, then I really don't know exactly what right-wing, credibility you have to stand for when you're talking about this.
All right, Jeremy Salton, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy to clear skies are expected tonight and showers tomorrow. The temperature will drop with an average of 44 degrees Fahrenheit or about 6 degrees Celsius. And then highs tomorrow will hit about 64 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. This is it's perfect just ahead of Purim. Get your dog a nice little costume. I think this is I don't know, a cow, I guess. This lockdown has me far away from any costume shops. I haven't gotten my dog anything. But anyway, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.28 shekels to the American dollar and 2.59 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And don't forget to visit the all-new and improved ILTV website at iltv.tv and subscribe to our newsletter for the latest updates while you're there. I'm Aaron Porras. Stay healthy. Thank you so much for watching.